Lucy Kerr is a filmmaker from Texas whose first feature, Family Portrait, debuted at Locarno Film Festival in 2023. It's a dreamlike piece of work following a multi-generational family as they attempt to take a family photograph. Hi, Lucy.
Hi.
Thanks for chatting to us.
Thank you for having me.
So look, I saw Family Portrait. I think it's really, really, really good.
Thank you.
I think it's incredibly beautiful. It's very scary. I think it's funny. I think it's brilliantly acted. But one of the things I wanted to ask though was like, there's a lot of very specific performances in it. Is the family you're making a film about a family? Is it based on a real family? Is it based on real people?
That's a good question. Yeah, I wanted to get very specific about the dialogue, everything in the frame, and the people themselves and the characters. So, yeah, it's sort of loosely based on my own family. So I have 3 sisters, and in the family, in Family Portrait, there are 4 sisters, and all of my sisters and I, we have a lot of fun together. But we're all very, we have our specific personalities. And I wouldn't say in Family Portrait, each sister is based on a sister, but I wanted to really dive into the specificities of each character and kind of how each of them feels about this portrait, even though that's not clear maybe in the film, but it comes out in their behaviors or in how they interact with one another. And also something about my own family. It's like very much fitting into this kind of social class in Texas, kind of upper middle class, upper class group of people that have been whose families have been in Texas for a while, for generations. And the sisters in the film and my sisters, they're all married and they have kids and kind of fit those expectations. But at the same time, they're quite weird and strange and talk about like all kinds of weirdly specific and strange conversations. So like when they talk about it at the end, the 3 sisters are talking about imagining things in their heads and like what a genius is, what's a sign of genius, kind of very unnerving conversation that one of the sisters can't imagine things in her head, or can't imagine. That's something I've heard my sisters even talk about once.
Really?
And I kind of took note of that conversation because it was such an interesting and bizarre conversation. And I'd like to show that they're not these stereotypical Southern sorority girls.
Sure.
There
are lots of conversations in it which frankly feel like they must have been pulled from real life because I'm not entirely sure how you could imagine them. The one that I wanted to ask is a long kind of conversation, an anecdote about a grandfather that we never met, whose photograph was taken in the Second World War on a stretcher, but was reappropriated perhaps by accident as a kind of anti-Vietnam image. Is that something you plucked from nowhere, or is that based on something real?
That's also based on something real, yeah. So my grandfather's in this picture from World War II where he got shot in the leg, and there's a picture of him on a stretcher being carried by 4 men. And it became pretty famous, that picture. And then one of my sister went to the memorial in Washington, D.C., and trying to think when that would have been, in the 90s or something. She saw that picture on a T-shirt saying, "Remember those that were in Vietnam." And she was like 12 at the time and had seen that. She knew that wasn't from Vietnam, and it was a really strange story as well. And my dad likes to tell the same stories over and over. So
sure, he's a dad.
Yeah. So yeah, that's always stayed with me. And then it felt like a interesting parallel to the Christmas card and to get into the movie They Live, which is also a movie that my dad likes.
I like that movie. It's a great movie. What's your dad's favorite thing about They Live?
Oh, let's see. I think it was sort of an awakening for him, maybe, that, about...
It was his Zizek.
Yeah, exactly. Like growing up in the 50s, 60s, that where things were very picture perfect and just this kind of this under the surface kind of manipulation.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
He's got good taste. He's got a 15-minute long boxing match in the middle of it. It's amazing. The family portrait itself, is that something your family does?
Yeah, as well. So every year there's a Christmas card. So my mom kind of takes it very seriously every year, and it always has a theme to it. So yeah, that was inspired. So I shot a documentary footage of my family trying to take a Christmas card in 2018. I was in film school, so I went home with a camera to shoot things. So I just set it up on a tripod, and it was in the same location as where this film was shot.
Mm-hmm.
And in that documentary, we were all wearing Christmas themed outfits. So it was very strange, us all wearing these Christmas outfits. And it took a very long time for everyone to come together to take the picture. It was all kinds of things happening, and it almost looked choreographed cinematically, every, and that's where some of the specificity of the characters come from. In that documentary, or in that document, one of the brothers-in-law can't stop playing with a soccer ball, and can't seem to stay still or want to fit in this picture. And it's almost what is this anxiety he has, about this family, or about this ritual he has to do every year, and kind of what he married into. So that's sort of what I took from that footage, and then I had a studio visit with Lucretia Martel when she visited.
Oh, cool.
CalArts. Yeah, so we all applied to have a meeting with her, and I was accepted. And we discussed, I showed her that footage, and that sort of gave me the confidence and to embark on the project. And we discussed how if something were to disrupt this card, since it represents a lack of conflict in the family. So if something were to disrupt the taking of the picture, then that could be a narrative starting point. Yeah.
It's a good note.
Yeah.
I think that there's something which it starts off kind of with the boyfriend character, the Polish guy. But I think that what you do really well is you kind of express, well, at least it's an anxiety that I've had many times in my life, of being in other people's houses and not entirely understanding the rules, traditions, norms, and feeling almost as though everything is being slightly mistranslated to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought you got that across really well. But then what's so powerful is perhaps that anxiety about being inside that place is transposed into our protagonist, the daughter.
Nice, yeah.
It's not really a question.
Yeah, I like that, yeah.
But I mean, look, am I right in thinking that it's set kind of at the cusp of COVID?
Yeah, it's supposed to be. So it's I know it was a bit different here in the US, but this cousin, she very mysteriously, being very young and healthy, just passes away from a virus. And it's sort of she was one of the first people to get sick before we really understood what it was. Or maybe she had been traveling or something and came back. Yeah, so that's the idea. But, I wanted to be super subtle about it, because I know we're all a little tired of COVID.
Yeah, but not pre-COVID stuff. That's what I thought was good about it. It's not a kind of, we're in the middle of it, Zoom stuff, which I feel very exhausted by. But I think the idea of not knowing what's coming over the cliff is actually really interesting. Was there something in that I don't know, you felt, I don't know, what did that add to the story that you were telling? Yeah,
so I think we've been through so many stages with COVID. I remember when it first hit, I was in a class in CalArts taught by Harry Dodge on interdependency. So we read this book on immunity right when it hit, which about immunity and vaccines and the resistance or against vaccines and all of that and the history of them. So at that time, we were all really interested in what was happening, the way that the whole world was so interconnected by this. Mm. And so that was a stage. And then it kept going on, and I had to go home. I graduated during COVID, graduated from my master's, and was in a limbo for a year too, and was writing this script. So it felt very acute at the time, this kind of loss of community, loss of meaning, and feeling of being stuck or a limbo. And I actually was having dreams of like trying to do something, but it never happened. And I feel like that translated into the film, like trying, being unable to do this thing. But now I feel like I'm going on a tangent, but
tangent away.
But what you were saying, about the kind of looming feeling, like during that time that I was writing the script, like, Trump was president, and
it's collectively known as the worst time ever.
It was just very. So I was thinking about this need to keep presenting this positive image while there's mass death and mass graves in New York City, and then meanwhile in other places, people are not believing this, or like people that are, saying it's a hoax and this and that. And my dad is often kind of in those conspiracy theories. So it was sort of about everything crumbling, but still the need of presenting this American excellence, or this American kind of superiority. And especially in the South, image making is or presenting a positive image is like the most important thing, or like a prosperous image, or successful image.
That's perfectly summed up by a Big Family Portrait, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it seems there is kind of a theme of violence running through it. There's, obviously there's a long conversation, as we discussed, about World War II in Vietnam, but also stories of alligators eating dogs, amputations from toxic shock syndrome, that type of thing. Were you consciously trying to kind of sprinkle a soupçon of violence throughout it, or did that kind of, I don't know, come unconsciously?
I think it was both. Like Rob Rice, who was kind of, he had many roles, sort of directorial advisor. So we were working together on set to think, okay, well, this is great, but like, how can we push it further and try different experiment, or try different ways, or like really bring this, elevate the script, elevate the film together. And he said the other day that like almost in every scene, there's like a body part that is mentioned. So there's like bladder, gums, legs, alligator, he got shot in the leg in World War II. Vietnam helicopter pilots have a 4-week life expectancy. And then, of course, the longer conversation that you mentioned about all these illnesses, sepsis, swine flu, this and this. And I think it's just like in my family, kind of the way of coping with difficult feelings is reverting to kind of other story, like gossip about other people, or kind of medical horror stories in terms of kind of loss or grief or death or decay. So that it sort of inspired me. And just, I think the body is kind of what I always kind of return to, since that's my kind of main interest, is kind of the body and performance and image making, and the gap between the body and its image. And so I just like kind of bringing up all those bodily things in this very like repressive environment.
Yeah.
Emotionally repressive. Yeah.
You're a choreographer, right?
Mm-hmm.
How choreographed was this film? Because the movement is beautiful, but complex.
Yeah, it's not all choreographed, which I think sometimes I tried not to be too choreographed, because sometimes I think even if it's a great, beautiful blocking, you can tell that it's kind of
fake.
Yeah. So I tried not to do that. And I think working with Lydia, the cinematographer, was just crucial. Like watching many films that use kind of tableaus, Bellatar, Satin Tango. So like that film has long takes. It has the moving camera outside, like we have in the inside. It has kind of very interesting 3 shots or 2 shots instead of shot reverse shot. So yeah, it was, in terms of how choreographed things are, like those two scenes that people might think of as the most choreographed, where they're going down to the river in the beginning and it's a bit wider, and then they're going down to the river in the end and she's sopping wet. So that I gave each person kind of a task and a different trajectory. So some of them, I told them, to keep going. Some of them go back and forth for different things. But within those directions, they are kind of improvising. And also Rob and I told each of them, like one of them, what each of their kind of story is with this picture. So for example, the sister that has a baby acts like she doesn't care about the picture, but really she wants to be in the middle with her baby. And so that's what's on her mind. And so each person has like a different thing on their mind, kind of. And that helps create the chaos.
Sure.
Rather than just saying act crazy.
Yeah. Oh, that's not how you direct. All right. Watching it, I was reminded of this quote about Days of Heaven by Terrence Malick, where someone said he makes nature documentaries about humans. And your film, I think, does something, I thought did something similar, where it's observing these people in much the same way it observes an earwig at one point. I think it's an earwig. Is it an earwig?
Yeah.
It's like creepy crawly.
It's like some kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously they have a kind of a deep relationship with nature in this. I don't know. I couldn't tell whether nature was a terrifying force or a kind of a benevolent one. Oh,
that's great. You can't tell, I guess. Yeah, I didn't go in with so many of the ideas of the animals, like the earwig or caterpillar, but I saw it, like we gave ourselves little blocks of time to just go around the property, see who's around and do things with them. And I just saw that on the ground and I was like, oh, let's film this. And then, let's have the character Laura lay down, and where it's getting very close to her because she was staying on that property. So most of us were staying there all together, which really helped with that. And then the mother and the daughter sitting on the on the rock, those two vultures, vultures are birds that eat dead animals. They came to just sit on the rock too. So, and we were filming that at the same time. And actually where the birds are sitting on the rock, the mother and the daughter are swimming also in the distance, but we ended up not using that whole frame. But yeah, for me, nature is really important like in the US and in Texas, everything is private property. So even like desert, like stretches of desert is private property in West Texas. So it's, I was very much thinking about land enclosure. But the area across the river where this property is very wild. And it is owned, I think that it's owned by the people living on the other side of the river. So I think we own some of that, but no one is ever keeping it up or anything. So it's like very wild. So I knew I wanted to use that when she kind of gets transported. And then I think just living on the river, it just became such a powerful place. I think it was so hot. It was like 100 degrees that we all needed to take a swim after set. And I think it kept kept everything, the vibes and everything very nice. Yeah, we were able to cool off. And that's how it is when my family's there, is that everyone is drawn to the river, but it's a bit sad in a way because the property, the grass is all perfectly groomed and there's so much water wasted on keeping the grass like that. And the water comes from the river and the river gets lower because of that. And also there are some relics around the house, like a Pennzoil trash can in one of the scenes. So they're like little hints of oil and the oil industry. And so thinking about how nature has been exploited, and then giving this force to nature so that it also becomes a character that we think about. And then at the end of the day, kind of the family's trying to make this picture and present this positive image, but that's just way to try to immortalize ourselves, but really we're, just also animals, like the two birds on the rock, and also gonna die, and so.
Not me. I draw a line of death. The sound design.
Yeah.
Is really, really good. Tell me what was the thinking process behind that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just I just know how important sound is, and that it's just been so, historically kind of the last thing people think about. And so I didn't want that to happen. And when I was in school, I really appreciated the sound classes I took, and just thinking, that it affects us so emotionally, so viscerally, but in a way that we don't define or recognize when it affects us, kind of. We just let it just washes over us and transports us. So I knew that I needed to create this dimension with the sound that's like a 3-dimensional feeling when you're sitting in the theater. So not just watching something in front of you, but being enveloped. And I mean, Andrew Siedenberg and Nikolai Antonov are just incredible sound artists and designers. And Andrew was there on set, and he knew this place very well, and he was always recording things everywhere. And, pretty much everything, nothing was ADR'd or anything like that. And it was the attention to detail, and the space was really important, prominent, and in his recordings. And then he kind of designed the first versions, first drafts, and then we sent it to Nikolai, and we all traveled to Berlin together and did more design and more mixing all together in a theater for like 10 very long days. And then after that, Nikolai and I worked on the intro because it was a big challenge for me, actually, this introduction. I didn't have this sound design that was like quieting them and this rumbling for a while. I had just diegetic sound,
sure, and
then a different type of sound. And so we worked like 3 months on that intro. And then
did you always know you were going to bring in like there's a sort of drone or something that's both at the top and at the end of the film? You always knew that was going to be in there.
Well, Andrew brought in this train sound at the end of the film, and then at the and so that came in the very beginning, and that's what that sound is.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, it's a train, so that's why it's like kind of like spiraling that way, because the train is passing. The train cars are passing, and then kind of low past it to.
It's a really cool choice.
Yeah. So it was really collaborative between Andrew and Nikolai. Like Andrew, brought in the train, then Nikolai kind of mixed it in. But Andrew also did some mix. Yeah, they both back and forth.
Everyone played around.
But in different parts of the world. So, so probably the sound was like an 8-month process, because Andrew came in pretty much at the beginning of when we had a rough cut.
It's like the sound in some ways is the first signifier to the audience that it's going to be an unsettling experience. And look, I'm probably reading too much into this, but the whole thing from an early very centrally framed shot in the sitting room, I could see the roof. It reminded me of the Overlook Hotel. And then the final shots with the character walking around wet, she looked like Carrie. Also, the name, you mentioned John Carpenter in the film, and the following shots look like Halloween.
That's so cool.
I don't know. Was there any part of you that's like, there's a bit of a horror in this?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I was totally going for that in a way that we can expand the genre of horror. And I'm interested in like combining different languages and kind of confusing the viewer and like, what exactly is this thing, kind of. And I have, so the character says, or Oleg says, we started watching that show you like, and she said, well, it's girlhood and satanic possession are my things.
What's the show?
Well, they're referring, any show, but okay, I was thinking like Yellow Jackets, but I didn't put that in there because that's like my guilty pleasure, like stuff like girlhood and horror and that sort of. So I have my own like pop culture kind of interests are sort of in that. So I tried to bring that in a little bit because even though, it's very much an art film, I also like those moments of genre or pop culture references. I like to include so that it operates on different levels.
And at the risk of getting really reductive, and we can delete this if you want, but like, what our main character, as we follow her to the lake and she dives in, she comes back. What has happened there? What has she digested? What has she started to understand? And over the course of the film, what has she been subjected to that has kind of brought on this extreme anxiety?
Yeah. Well, she reads the passage at the beginning of the film, which is a passage at the beginning of this article by a woman named Leora Goder, who's a scholar. And that article is about Lacan, and it's very difficult to understand, but that first passage like really spoke to me, which is so this young girl's eating with her mother, and then she looks up from her food and sees that her mother has kind of disappeared from the world, and kind of where did she go? And when she is the quote, where did she go when she would leave her empty gaze fixed on me, and that she like a monster sitting before her. And that's something I've felt with my mother, and just like coming from her body is, and then, being, which is such a trippy thing that we are born in that way from our mother and having that intense connection. But then at a certain age, you realize you're separate from the mother. So like the mirror stage, or then you realize you're not one with the mother, and there's like this mourning and this grief.
Yeah, it's traumatic.
Yeah, it's traumatic. And also growing up and seeing that your mother is not like a superhero, or, like she's fragile as well and makes mistakes and is haunted as well, haunted in different ways, and is also mortal. And so that kind of existential feeling with the mother, and then this idea that the mother has left from her body. So she's kind of in a way going to search for the mother, but she never really finds her, but ends up in the water as if it's kind of like in the womb, which I don't need people to like understand that, but yeah. And then they turn into birds. So she has a flashback of her and her mother sitting on the rock. And then like the most that I can say about what happens to the mother is that she turns into like a bird. And then she's, grieving that loss of the mother, whether it's just realizing that you're separate than the mother, or maybe the mother has died, or maybe they all are, they've all died. And yeah, I'm not sure. But
well, I think it's really effective and really good.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming to hang out.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been really fun.
Good.